Hello. Hello! Let's get into a Gitz unit tier list. Look at this. I love this painting job by Jar Miniatures. I love the, look at all the detail in the purple. It's crazy. Excellently done. But first, of course, I'd like to thank all my sponsors. And the best way to support the channel is through Patreon. So if you're interested in helping out the channel, Patreon's the best way to do that. Thanks to Iberian for the logo and all the sick art. And thanks to Baron of Dice for also supporting the channel. If you're going to buy dice, you might as well buy them through Baron of Dice. And if you're going to buy them through Baron of Dice, you may as well use code MDG at checkout. But let's get into it. So, Gitz, let's see, make tier list maker. I wanted to show you first what I had this all ready to go, but this was my Gitz tier list from, oh, looks like it's been reset. No! I was going to show you the Gitz tier list from the previous edition to see how things have changed. And that is what I'm going to do. And here it is. This is the Gitz tier list from the end of 3rd edition. So up in S tier we have Rock Guts, Sneaky Snufflers, Boingrot Bounders, Squig Herd, and Squig Boss. And this is, of course, from when Squig Herd was ridiculously overpowered, and so it was the little combo. It's like Herd, Snufflers, Squig Boss, fantastic. Rock Guts were still F tier, and then they got buffed going into this edition, so that was fun. Bounders were also S tier. People were just spamming units of Bounders all day, every day. Up in the A tier, we had the Loon Boss on Cave Squig, or on Mangler Squig. This is because you had the Fight Another Day ability, and if you took that enhancement, this was actually a really sick unit. Very difficult to deal with. Not S tier, but still really strong. I remember I wanted to play a list with Scragrot and Trug and the Mangler, and just sort of have and make the Mangler the general and give him Fight Another Day, and just have all of this ridiculousness in this army, but it was good. Skitterstrand of Ragnarok was also at A tier. Maybe probably could have been at B here, but Fellwaters were A tier. Their Unleash Hell Noxious Vomit was really strong, removing a +1 to save and not allowing your opponent to buff their save with Unleash Hell was very, very strong. Fungoid Cave Shaman was also A tier. He was invisible outside of 12, a very excellent candidate to be the general. Stand by the Loon Shrine and Kig's Gitz with the Clammy Hand, very good. Loon Court is removed from the game, but he was A tier just because he went with Squigs really, really well. Stabas were really good in A tier. Lots of lists would run 1 unit of Stabas. They could take objective outside of 9 inches. Very good. The Fanatics were also A tier. They could pop out of these Stabas or Shootas or Grinkrat or Snufflers or Gobble. There was lots of different units that he could pop out on. So they were actually really cool to pair with Gobblepalooza, which was also A tier. And their rules were kind of better in the previous edition, but we'll get into that here in a bit. And then the Spider Infantry caster was also really good, just because he had a 5-up ward. And so we're talking about Blizzard, we're talking about, right? So just the fact that he's a Andorian Locust with, a 5-up board was really good. In B tier, we had Spider Riders. Their condition was that if you needed a cheap cavalry unit, they were the cheap cavalry unit. The Loon Boss on foot was also B tier. He was good. I can't remember when. The Big Spiders were B tier, and I don't even know why. They should probably have all been F tier. The Dankhold was B tier. He didn't... he's a lot better now. Dankhold Trug Boss was also B tier. It's if you're gonna play a Gitz list with a bunch of trolls, he was fine. Snarlfang Riders were B tier. But these guys, Snarlfangs could have probably been an A tier. And Rippa's Snarlfangs maybe could have also been an A tier, but I put them down here in B tier. Spore Splatter Fanatics were B tier if you wanted to break line of sight. It was pretty good. And the Gitz Manifestations were B tier. I don't think people were really playing a lot of them. Not when Scragrot had a 12-inch Aura of the Moon. F tier was Ale Guzzler Gargant, not really playable. Kragnos, not really playable. I don't even know what this unit is, but I never saw it played. Loon Boss on Cave Squig didn't really do anything good. The Mangler Squigs were at the bottom. I don't even know what this unit's called. He's at the bottom. Hoppers were at the bottom because Bounders were just so much better and to do everything. Zarbag's Gitz was at the bottom. Shootas and Rabble Rouse was at the bottom because I think he couldn't deep strike on his own. So yeah, that's what my tier list was from the previous edition. So let's get into this edition now. So 4th edition Gitz tier list. We're going to start off by doing all the monsters. So I think Kragnos is just going to be placed in A tier. I think Kragnos has been an A tier. This is the third tier list that I'm doing for greenskins, and Kragnos has been an A tier every single time. He is not an auto-include, but if you wanted to countercharge, Rock Guts, it's sick. So very good. Skitterstrand or Ragnarok, I'm going to put in B tier. His giant dinner plate of a base, I think, is his biggest drawback. The thing that is good about him now, this edition that is interesting, is that he can be placed like out of reserve onto the table at the end of any or during any player's movement phase, right? I'm just trying to pull him up here. Skitterstrand or Ragnarok. So, like, the fact that he can move, that he can come out of ambush in any movement phase is really good. But he's just kind of too expensive right now, 250 points. So if this is kind of a tactic that you're really going for, like where you're going to go with the Skitterstrand, Ragnarok, and maybe a Rabble Rouser to help give him that run and charge, like it's certainly not the worst thing in the world. But and then I'm just going to go ahead and put all of these other spiders in F tier. I'm sorry to say this, Gitz spider players, but I think that they're bad on purpose. I've been playing this game long enough now, not super long, maybe like 2 or 3 years, but I've been playing this game long enough watching Bone Splitters that aren't, some units, some subfactions, some armies have rules that are bad on purpose. GW does not want you buying these models, so oblige them. Do not buy these models. If you're interested in playing spiders, I suggest 3D printers, like for sure, because they're just not very good. They don't hit very hard. They're kind of expensive. Like they're just, like I don't know. They're just not worth playing. Dankhold Trogboss, I think, is S tier. I think a Dankhold Trogboss. I think the Dankhold is the best, like elite Trog. So if we're talking about a boss, a Trog boss, Trug, and a Dankhold, I think the Dankhold is the best out of those guys. First of all, he's only 180 points, which is phenomenal. He's super cheap. Second, he's a monster. So he has a rampage. Do you know what his rampage is, everybody? His rampage is called Wade and Smash. Wade and Smash. Once per turn, army, any combat phase. Any combat phase. So we're doing this before the units fight. If this unit is in combat, it can move 6 inches, but must end that move in combat. It can move its move every combat phase. It has to end in combat. It doesn't say you have to end in combat with the same unit that you started in combat with. You just have to end in combat. Then you do a 2-up D3 mortal wounds to every unit that's within 1 inch. To every unit that's within 1 inch. So that's pretty good. Of course, he also has the magical 4-up spell ignore thing, but the real thing that this guy is very good at is moving 6 inches and then squishing some little infantry hero. Squishing the thing that's giving the 6-up ward, squishing the thing that's giving the buff, because he doesn't have a huge volume of dice, but he does have 4 attacks at 4s and 2s with 2 rend and then D3 plus 3 damage. So if 2 attacks go through, you're gonna kill whatever little infantry hero is in the back line. And I think like that's his role. His role is to come off, not from the flanks, but sort of to the side, maybe, of where the rock guts are, and just like scoot around the edge of your opponent's like infantry line, and then just smash. It's very, very strong, very, very good. I'm a big fan of the Dankhold. The Trog boss, however, I think is A tier. I don't think he's like an auto-include if you're playing trolls, but I think he's also pretty strong. He doesn't deal as much damage. Right, he still has that 4-up magical resistance, and his rampage is, if he's in combat on a 3-up, you can add 1 to the attack characteristic of trolls, of like rock guts, for example, like a reinforced unit of rock guts. So 6 extra rock gut attacks is a lot of extra rock gut attacks, and is also very good and very strong. But I really value that movement that we're getting from the Dankhold, because Dankhold movement is just really, really good and really, really scary for our opponents. Next up is Trug. I think Trug, I sort of feel the same way about the Dankhold that I do about Trug, or sorry, the Trog boss as I do about Trug. Trug's big problem, and the reason that I don't rate Trug higher, is because of his inconsistency. So, he has his ley line where you get to roll 3 dice, and, you get to pick one of the 3 different numbers. But the number of times that I've seen players on the other side of the table roll like 2 1s and something they didn't want is too high. So when Trug is like popping off, when he's got, there's only really 2 things that you want. You want the 5-up Warren and the +1 to the attacks that you get with for friendly Troggoth units that are wholly within 12. So essentially the same buff as the Dankhold, but the Dankhold does it on a 3-up, and Trug has to roll 3 dice, and one of those numbers has to be the one that you want. So it's a little bit too inconsistent. Another reason that I don't rate Trug higher is because he only throws 6 dice. He has 4 attacks at 3s and 2s with 2 rend and 4 damage, which is fine. And then his Mighty Antlers, which is his better attack, only throws 2 dice at 4s and 2s. So every time that Trug is just gonna like smash and deal like, you know, 15 damage, he's also gonna kind of whiff and deal like 5 damage. So consistency for me is really important, and I'm just not there yet. I still think Trug is really strong, but I do not think that he is like an auto-include even in Trolls. Again, I'll say that again. I do not think that Trug is an auto-include even if you're playing Trolls. I think that there's other ways that you can play him and other things that you can do. Okay? Loon Boss on Mangler Squig. I think that I'm very confused about the Mangler Squigs right now because people are playing them. I'm seeing lots of people who are running like a bunch of them in a list, and 2 or 3 times now I've had to re-look at the Mangler Squigs and sit down and kind of think about like what they're actually doing. So there's not a ton of good enhancements this edition, and the Fight Another Day enhancement that used to go on this guide that used to be really good is a lot worse now because it happens at the end of the turn. So in 3rd edition, you could take the Loon Boss on Mangler Squig, you could fight and then immediately retreat, and it was sick. It was like, I'm gonna bite you and then I'm gonna bounce away and like just be this floating giant 2-time meatball floating around the battlefield that you're having a hard time pinning down, and he was really good. But now I'm just not seeing it. He's fast. He's got an 8-inch plus D6 move, and you can re-roll that move if you're under the light of the bad moon. So you're looking, you know, he's in that like 12 sort of club of his movement speed. When he moves 9, it's gonna feel real bad, but when he's moving 14, he'll feel pretty quick. He's on a 5-up save though, with no ward. So even though he has 14 wounds, like this guy's going down. Like these guys are not going to survive for very long, you know? Like they're just not that survivable. And then their damage, their attacks are kind of piddly. You know, the Moon Kutta is 5 attacks on 4s. I drop it. Is 5 attacks on 4s and 4s with 1 rend. He has another one that's 4 attacks, 4s and 2s, which is better, with only 1 rend, and then D6 damage. So, and this is the Fang-Filled Gob, so this is the one that's going to get an additional attack if you charge with the Squigalanche battle formation. But the D6 damage just really turns me off. And the Ball and Chain, 4 attacks, 4s and 4s with no rend. Like, this guy's just not getting through. I did the math just recently, like just a minute ago. I actually have it up here. So he's only expected to do about 6.5 damage versus a 4-up save. And then he's at a 2.5 efficiency, like damage per point. So he's quite low in damage per point. And because 2 of his attacks have Companion, there's not a lot that you can really do to buff this guy. So he's also hungry for CP because he wants that all-out attack all the time. He also wants that all-out defense all the time because he's got a bad save. So I don't know. They're CP hungry. They're fast. They're not particularly tanky. They don't take objectives better than like any other monster. I'm not finding control to be a super important stat so far. Even then, it's like, you know, he has a Rampage, pick this unit and all friendly squigs wholly within 12 inches to be the target. Add 1 to wound rolls for their squig attacks. Like, that's a good buff. It feels like it would be best with Herd, but too bad Herd are actually kind of terrible. So, like, I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. Like, why are people super pumped on these Manglers and the Loon Boss on Manglers? I don't see it. They're not tanky. They don't deal a lot of damage. They don't offer a ton of utility. I don't know. I'm not seeing it. You'll have to let me know in the comments below what you think. But for me, I think I'm just going to stick them in B tier. I don't think that they're, like I said, I don't think that they're particularly strong. Yeah, I don't know. They're mobile, right? Like the Mangler Squig, like the non-hero version, has his rampages. If this unit charged this turn, roll a die on a 3-up, it can move 3d6 but must end the move in combat. So they're going to kind of get where you want them to be. But because like their bases are pretty big, I think they're 100 millimeters, so being able to zone them out of your squishy guys in the back is not going to be incredibly difficult. So, I don't know. I'm just not seeing why, besides the model. The models are phenomenal. So when are they B tier? Is there a situation? I think that the situation is if you're going to run a bunch of squigs. If you're going to run like a squigalanche, I think that they're fine. If you're like, I'm running all squigs and that's my list, then I think that you can play them and they're fine. They're not terrible. I just don't think that they're good. So if you were like, yeah, I don't know, like, I'm just not seeing it. The cave boss. So I call this guy the Bounder boss. He's the cave boss on giant, or the loon boss on giant cave squig rather, the Bounder's boss. So I think he's actually, I don't think he's S tier. I don't think he's an auto-include, but I do think he's A tier. I think he's really, really good. I think the fact that he lets Bounders fight with him is really strong. He himself actually deals a reasonable amount of damage all by his lonesome. If I look up the stats or whatever, the Loon Boss on Squig on the charge is going to deal just under 5 damage all by himself. And then the fact that he can bring in +1 attack with the Boingrot Bounders and fight with him is quite strong. So 10 times Bounders on the charge with the Loon Boss are going to deal something like 25 damage if they have a reinforced unit of Bounders. Like, they're quite strong. +1 attack is exactly what Bounders need, right? Because they hit on 4s. So being able to bring them in and they also fight on 3s is very, very good. Scragrot, I think Scragrot's either A tier or S tier. I think I'm going to lean towards S tier because for me personally right now, he is an auto-include. He is 2 casts with only 1 drop, and Fangs of the Bad Moon is a very good spell. In addition, the fact that he can control the moon, I think is very relevant for trolls. The fact that you can be like, well, when the moon does go into the middle, it's going to stay there for 2 turns, I think is quite good. So he's cheaper now than he was in the previous edition, so points for him there. Right now he's only 220 points, not a lot cheaper than last edition, but still cheaper. And I feel like he's cheaper relative to how everything else in the game has like moved around in their points, but I'm a big fan. If you don't have a Scragrot, I suggest getting a Scragrot and having some fun. The Fungoid Cave Shaman, I'm going to stick at an A tier. I think he's really, really strong. I don't think he's an auto-include, but he's pretty darn close. He can take any Moon Clan, which is pretty cool as a hero drop, and he can also take a Moon Clan Agitator, which in this case, of course, is a Rabble Rouser or a Loon Boss, so he's got a lot of utility. He can take a lot of different things with him. Oh no, sorry, it's any Moon Clan, so it's not any Gloomspike Gitz. I thought it was any Gloomspike Gitz. Scragrot can take any Gloomspike Gitz. But taking Moon Clan is good, right? We have Gobblepalooza, we have, you know, some squigs. We have all kinds of good things that we can take in Moon Clan. The thing about him that is actually quite good is that he, with an artifact, Loon Touched, or is that a heroic trait? I can't remember. But I think it's a heroic trait. But he can get +1 to cast, so he can be a 1 cast +1 wizard with his Death Cap Mushroom, where he, once per battle in your hero phase, can consume this mushroom and get +1 power level. So it's a great thing to do at the very start of the game if you have him at +1 to help get out some early manifestations. Like using this mushroom at the very beginning and being like, Moon, like I'm casting the Malevolent Moon, and I'm casting Mork's Mighty Mushroom, or the little Arachna Cauldron or whatever. The Arachna Cauldron's pretty sick, because then you have a 2 cast +1 wizard who once per battle can be a 3 cast +1 wizard. So, you know, get that Arachna Cauldron out first, eat the mushroom, cast the moon, and then cast Scuttletide, and you're just laughing with your manifestations running rampant everywhere. Good times were had by all. The Loon Boss on foot, the Infantry Loon Boss, I think is going to be F tier. So it's a choice here between B tier and F tier with the Loon Boss on foot. So the reason that I'm leaning towards F tier and not B tier is because the situation. Sorry, I guess I should say that too. I didn't do it in this video, but the way that my tiers are defined is S tier is like an auto-include. Like, you're going to include this unit in pretty much every army that you make. A tier is really, really strong. It's not necessarily an auto-include, but when you see it in a list, you're not confused. You're like, oh yeah, this guy's good. B tier is situationally good, so under certain conditions, certain playstyles, certain tactics, certain list constructions, certain metas, and so on, that the B tier units sort of become like A tier units, right? When certain conditions are met. And then F tier is unplayable. It means that if you're looking for a competitive list, it means that units in the F tier would be better replaced with any other unit for similar or lower point costs. So I would never take a Skitterstrand. I'd rather take anything in the A tier and have the rest of the points missing, right? Like, I'd rather be 150 points short but take a take a Fungoid Cave Shaman over like one of these Flingers or whatever. I guess I'm short one of the models, but it doesn't matter because they're all just F tier. So for me, the Loon Boss, the Infantry Loon Boss, I think I'm going to stick him in F tier because the situation in which he would be good, i.e. running, you know, like a reinforced brick of Stabas or whatever, because what he does is he fights with Moon Clan Infantry, and Moon Clan Infantry is only Stabas and Shootas. Oh, no, that's not true. Yeah, all that he does is fight with them. That's all that this is. This is a Moon Clan Infantry that he fights with. So this could technically be like Fanatics, but he doesn't give them any kind of buff. So it's like all that he's doing is adding his small amount of damage, right? 5 attacks, force and force, 1 rend, D3 damage onto a unit that's actually good, and that isn't justifying his points all by itself, right? Because the Loon Boss on foot is 130 points. So it could just be, he could be a unit of Bounders, right? He could be a unit of something else. And then his other ability in your hero phase called I'm the Boss only applies to Stabas, right? And it's on a 2-up, but you can return D6 slain models, whatever, and then +1 to wound rules. So I don't know, like the Stabas aren't good, so he's not good. The Squig Boss, this is like the, is he actually called, this is the guy who's actually called the Squig Boss with Nash's Squig. This is the little like Squig. I think he's probably B tier. I think that you maybe play him in a Squigalanche list, right? On a 2-up, you have to pick a Squig unit in combat range with him, and on a 2-up, you add 3 of the target's move characteristic, or you give crit mortals to their fang-filled gobs. So I think that maybe Hoppers, right? I think maybe Hoppers, because at least Hoppers come in units of 10, so they're going to be throwing like 20 plus dice. So, but there's not really any way to give them +1 damage. So it doesn't feel very good, right? But if you're gonna do like a Squig list with a reinforced unit of Hoppers, like okay, like fine, this guy's fine. The Spider Shaman, the Infantry Spider Shaman. I always forget the names of these things because I never play them. But let me see, where is he? A Web Spinner Shaman. I think a Web Spinner Shaman is probably B tier. I don't think he's A tier. I do think he's strong, right? But here's the reason why he's B tier is because he's not worth a drop, right? He's not worth a drop, and he only takes Spider Fang. So what are you taking in this guy's regiment if he's a drop? It's probably nothing. You know, it's probably an empty regiment with just him, or maybe it's 1 unit of Spider Riders, but you know, he lets Spider Fang run and charge, so like okay, you know, but there's not really any Spider Fang we want to run. And then he's got this cool little teleport where he can like fling himself 18 inches across the board on a 2-up, and that's really sick and really strong and really good, but he costs a drop and he's not bringing anything with him. And for 40 points cheaper, you get a Fungoid Cave Shaman, who's, in my opinion, is a better caster. Because he can get I think a once per game +1 power level is better than anything that the Web Spinner Shaman can bring. And the Fungoid is Moon Clan, so he can actually bring some good units. And he's 40 points cheaper. So I think he's actually F tier, now that I think about it a little bit more. I don't think there's any real case. The only time that you would bring him over a Fungoid is if you're playing Spiders, but I think playing Spiders is an F tier scenario, so even when this guy is at his best, I think he's still probably like F tier. Which is unfortunate because he has a cool teleport ability, which is nice. Rabble Rouser, I'm going to stick him at B. If you want to run a bunch of monsters and you want them all to run in charge, sure. Rabble Rouser's your man, right? Spiders, like him a lot. Trolls, like him a lot. If you're going to play a bunch of Mangler Squigs, right? So I think that in the right scenario, he's good. One thing about him is that he is a Moon Clan Agitator, so he won't cost a drop if you want to bring him, right? You just have to bring either a Fungoid, a Loon Boss, like some kind of Trug. Nope, not Trug. Yeah. Trug can bring a Trog Boss, by the way. So usually when you see Trug, you see the Trog boss together. So that's cool. I don't know how I feel about Fell Waters. My initial rating of them was actually quite low. But that's because I think that their Noxious Vomit ability is significantly worse than it was in the previous edition, and they're only at a 5-up save. But I've kind of come around on them a little bit. While their Noxious Vomit ability isn't as good as it was in the previous edition, and because Unleash Hell doesn't exist, you know, but it still, like, does the thing, and it still does the strong thing. So even if it's not as good as it was in the previous edition, it is still, like, pretty good, and their damage is really high. That's the thing. They actually deal more damage than Rock Guts. Whoa, 6 Fell Waters are going to deal about 19 damage, and 6 Rock Guts are going to deal about 13 damage. So, they're actually quite good. Their range is short, but they're not like a good anvil, but they're almost kind of like a troll hammer, as odd as it sounds. So I'm just gonna leave them an A tier. I haven't myself put them on the table, so I'm not super confident in this, but that's where they're gonna stay for now. Rockets, however, are gonna be S tier. They're so good. They're so good. People are winning tournaments by just playing as many Rockets as they can fit in a list. So do I need to say more? They have a 5-up ward, 5 wounds, and under the light of the bad moon, they have a 3-up save, and they heal after fighting, and they hit really hard. Like, they're really good. Hoppers, I'm going to stick Hoppers in B tier. The reason that I'm going to stick them in B tier is for 2 different reasons. One, if you can't afford a reinforced unit of Bounders, but you still want a cavalry unit, these guys are your next best go-to. So that's a condition when they become okay. If you're going to do a Squigalanche list and you're going to reinforce a unit of Hoppers and, like, buff them in the middle, then they can sort of be okay. And yeah, that's kind of it, right? Like, they're just fine. They don't deal a ton of damage. They're a little bit faster, but they're just not on the same level. But there's a situation in which they can be good. Blind Grot Bounders, however, I think are A tier. I think that every list could use some. They are really good at grabbing objectives. They're fast. They hit hard. What's not to like? They're probably undercosted, to be honest, but they're good. The Spider Riders are going to get B tier from me. The reason that they are, or when they are good, they do something that the other cavalry units don't do, which is move exactly 10 inches. The Bounders and the Hoppers all have a random move characteristic, so the Spider Riders are going to be able to be consistent in this regard. And they also have 2 control each. So for 110 points, you're getting 5 models that have a sum of 10 control score. So that's kind of like they do a little thing that's different. So if you're looking for that little thing, objective grabbers and a little bit faster, like more consistently faster. Oh no, they don't move 10. I think they move 12. Let's see. Spider Riders. No, they move 10 inches. So they could, I mean, they're not as fast, but they're more consistent in their speed. But they do have 2 control, so they can sort of take away an objective from a squad of 5 that only have 1 control. But they're not particularly good. Snarlfang Riders. I wanted Snarlfang Riders to be better this edition because I was in love with them. In the previous edition, I played them in Big Wah on one of my flanks. I had a Gorgrunta Gouger on one flank, and then these Snarlfang Riders on the other side. But they've kind of lost some of their utility. They don't have a 6-inch pile-in anymore. And they lost the rend on the slathering jaws from the dog, so they're not as punchy as they used to be. But they do get a free redeploy every turn. If it's not in combat, this unit can move D6. It cannot end in combat. So they get a free redeploy every turn. So that's pretty good. 12-inch move is fine. But the weird thing about them is that they don't have the Moon Clan keyword, and they don't have... Like, they have no squig keyword. They have the git mob keyword. So this might be a new direction that they're taking Gitz. I could see the git mob actually being sort of recreated with, like their overland, above ground goblins. More traditional goblins. So spiders could be a thing. And, like, wolves could be a thing. and that would be pretty cool. I would like that. But no other units, as far as I can tell, have this Git mob keyword. So we'll have to see what the future looks like for Gloomspite Gitz and the Git mob. But I don't know how I feel about them. They're kind of cheap. They're 130 points, but 5 bounders are 5 points cheaper. So unfortunately, I just don't see a situation where you're taking these guys, unfortunately, which is really too bad because they're not even bad. It's just compared to other things, their points are going to have to come down. I think I'm going to leave them in B tier because I just don't think that they're like super bad. So the situation that they're good is you want to have a free redeploy. Fanatics, I'm going to stick in A tier. Fanatics are, even though they're not as strong as they were in the previous thing, they lost some of their movement shenanigans because when you set them up, they have to be wholly outside of 9 of the enemy unit, but previously they only had to be outside of 3 of the enemy unit. But they do smash hard. They do what they say on the box. A reinforced unit of them is going to be throwing so much damage. They're going to be wiping out whatever they run into, particularly because they have always strike first. So kabam, kabam, kabam. Another buff that they got this edition is that all of them can come out of a single unit of stabas. So, oops. So a cool like idea that and I've played this list once. I took 2 reinforced units of Fanatics. I teleported or auto ran a unit of stabas up the board really early, and then I unloaded all the Fanatics and then tried 3 attempts at a 9-inch charge. You can do this with even more units of Fanatics, like smaller units of Fanatics, and even though they're outside of 9, if you're rolling 3, 4, 5 9-inch charge rolls, you're gonna make some of them, right? And so that's pretty cool, so I like that. The Spore Splat of Fanatics, I'm not as big of a fan. I think that they can move in the deployment phase, which is 2d6, so they're going to get a jump, but they don't have strike first, and what they do is they add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons used by Moon Clan units while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit. So they have to be wholly within 12, and so it doesn't really benefit like the Bounders and the Hoppers because they're too fast and running away. And so what are they buffing? Like Stabas? Right? Like, give me a break. Like, there's not a whole bunch that I want to buff that's going to be, like, standing in the center, and the Spore Splattas are still going to cost 120 points. So, I don't know. I'm just not feeling it. Sneaky Snufflers is stuck between a B tier and an F tier. Unfortunately, this once very great and very mighty unit has fallen far. Because there's no more targets. There's no more good targets for you to do this, right? It's the same thing, like Under the Light of the Bad Moon on a 2-up or on a 3-up. Otherwise, they get a 5-up award, but it has to be to a Moon Clan unit. So what are you giving? Like, what unit are you giving this 5-up award to, right? So you can do things like the only time that I think this guy's actually going to be decent is if you're like, I'm going to take, and I still want to try this list. I haven't tried this list because the Squigalanche just isn't as good as the Trolls, right? But what happens if you take a reinforced unit of Hoppers, and they're going to be your frontline battle line? It's not going to be Squigs, but Hoppers have 2 wounds each, so that's 40 wounds now on a 5-up ward. So, and if they have crit mortals from a Squig boss, I think that you might be able to make a play here, but that's going to be, I think, the only situation. I don't know, like, giving Stabas, giving anything with 1 wound just doesn't feel good to have with a 5-up ward. So they got to be somewhat survivable on their own, and you can't give this to any of the Trolls, so it's not like you can do Fell Waters, and they also have a 5-up ward, so I don't know. I'm just not really feeling it. Squigs are at the bottom. I'm not sure if Squigs are F tier or if Squigs are B tier. My big problem with Squigs is that, like, they're cheap at 100 points for 10/12 of them, but I don't know what role they fill because they're slow. They have a maximum move of 9 inches, but they roll a d6 plus 3 inches. Even with that reroll, doesn't feel great. They have a 6-up save, no ward, and 1 health, so any kind of shooting, they're toast. Any kind of ranged spells or mortal wounds, they're toast. If someone charges into them and kills them, they're toast. But yeah, they do have, on a 5-up, they do fight before they die. But again, if it's shooting or whatever, they don't get to do that. And they count their beasts, so the whole unit counts for 1 control. And the herders bringing them back isn't as impactful because it used to be they had 2 wounds and a 5-up ward. But now with only 1 health, it's like, well, the unit's just going to get wiped, right? Like, dealing 10 damage on against a 6 of save is not that hard to do. So I don't know what they do. Like, I don't know what you're doing with this unit. So I'm gonna stick him in F tier for now. Let me know in the comments below how the mighty have fallen. Gobapalooza, I'm gonna stick at A tier, and I think that Gobapalooza in A tier is strictly they cast a spell without being a hero, and that's great. If that's all, even they have their other ability, right, where they have to like I think it's on a 3-up. They get to pick one of the 3 things. I think one is adding rend. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Add 1 to run and charge rolls, which is good. Add 1 to rend, which is good. And then shutting off commands, which is good. So even though it's on a 3-up, just the fact that they're a wizard 1 and not a hero, I think is easily worth their points. Their Gobapalooza no what's is just like a little bit of a benefit. I'm going to put Stabas at B tier. The only time that you take Stabas is if you're playing Fanatics. If you're not playing Fanatics, I don't think that Stabas really have a role. If you're looking for a unit just to get in the way and die, I guess that's Squigs. I'll stick Squigs at B tier because I guess that's when you take them. You have 100 points, 200 points, and all you want is screens. Stabas, or I think Herd, make better. They make better screens just because they're cheaper, right? Stabas are 140 points and Herd are only 100 points, so that difference is great. So I'm going to stick Stabas at B tier because only if you're playing Fanatics. And then I'm going to stick the Shootas at F tier because I'm not rolling that many dice to deal no damage. And I don't think that they have any other kind of ability, right? They have the Netters, so on a 3-up you can subtract 1 from hit rolls for units or things that target them. Yeah, but they have to be in infantry and they have to be in combat, and then it's a 3-up, but whatever. They have a 6-up save on 1 health, and they're not going to offer me all that much. And then the Manifestation Lore, I think, is A tier. I would put the Manifestation Lore into S tier, and I think if I were to break up the Manifestation Lore into individual pieces, I could see myself putting some of these things in S tier, but as a whole, I'm just not seeing it. So the Arachna Cauldron is very, very strong. Giving +1 power level is really, really good when you're trying to cast manifestations and get rid of manifestations. The Malevolent Moon is okay. I think it's better in Trolls because you can just stick it sort of behind a block of Rock Guts and be like, okay, they're always on a 3-up save. And then the other unit of Rock Guts is sort of by the Loon Shrine or in the quarter and whatever, right? So it sort of gives you a way of giving Moon to units that wouldn't otherwise get Moon, which is great for Rock Guts because they have the only Moon ability that's actually good. Rerolling a move is not like super impressive, right? And then Mork's Mighty Mushroom is actually pretty decent at blowing it. It has a 5-up Horde Buster, so even though it only looks at models under its light, it does all of them. So that's pretty cool. And then the the Spider one, whatever, is fine. But the Arachna Cauldron, I think, is S tier. The Moon, Mork's Mighty Mushroom, are B tier or A tier, and then I think that the Skitter Strand or whatever it's called, Scuttle Tide, I think, is B tier. But so as a whole, I'm going to give them A tier. So just to recap, at S tier we have Dankhold, Scragrot, Rock Guts, and Bounders. So most of my lists start with all of these units every single time. If I'm playing more of a Squig list, if I'm playing more of a Troll list, it doesn't matter. For me, I'm going to start with these 4 units every single time. At A, we have Kragnos, Trug, Dankhold Trogboss, Loon Boss on Giant Cave Squig, Fungoid Cave Shaman, Fellwater Troggoths, Fanatics, Gobapalooza, and the Endless Spells. So it's like less than half of the Gitz army, I think, is better than a B tier. And to be honest, most of the B tier, I think, are pretty much unplayable. And the only reason that a lot of these are in B tier is because I feel like I need to be fair to other players and how other players are going to play in their style. But like looking at the B tiers, it's like there's nothing in here that I really want to play at all. So I would say that in the Gloomspike Gitz, like half of the units are playable, and then more than half of the units aren't really playable. Big time internal balance problems in Gloomspike Gitz. So let me know what you think. Did I get this tier list pretty correct? Am I kind of spot on, at least for my S and A tiers? And then B and F, like if you're going to make an argument to me about why something shouldn't be F tier, it should be B tier, or why something shouldn't be B tier or should be F tier, I just agree with you because I don't care. The difference for me in between B and A tier is not significant here. So yeah, like whatever. To me, it just feels like a lot of the units in the army are kind of not really playable if you're being serious about like competitive lists and whatever. But if you disagree, please do let me know. You'll find a link to the Discord down below in the comment section. Like, subscribe. Wah.